Hey there everyone, we're back again with another video on the Mr. Analyst channel. Of course, thanks so much again for subscribing to the channel. Keep it coming. I'm going to try to make my content as interesting as possible. Speaking of interesting content, I have here a copy of the police report of Sha'Carri Richardson's arrest on Sunday, not Monday as I mentioned in the last video. Completely forgot the timeline there, so I apologize for that. But I have here a copy of the video, and it's quite interesting because we have been told initially that she and, of course, Christian Coleman, her boyfriend of about 2 years, were in an altercation at the airport in Seattle. As it turns out, Coleman was already kind of a non-participant, but he was more of a victim based on what the report is saying. And I think it's very interesting to note that this is becoming or seems to be a trend with Sha'Carri Richardson, which is unfortunate because you remember in her previous relationship, of course, with Jamaica's Johnny Brown, there was a lot of toxicity. And we had believed that things had settled down for her. Of course, eventually she went on to win the world title in Budapest in 2023. And of course, ran really fast, breaking Shelley and Fraser Price's championship record of 10.67, running 10.65. And we were hoping, well, certainly I was hoping, that now she will be settling down into what will or what should be an outstanding career. But again, it seems to have hit another hurdle, which is unfortunate. So on Sunday, apparently, she, according to the police report here I have here, physically abused Christian Coleman. Sorry, and he initially, based on the police report, refused to file a report or to even admit that anything went on. But apparently the police went, checked the security cameras and saw what unfolded. And if I can read from you here, I won't get into the preamble of what the report was saying, because it basically says that Coleman was reluctant to talk, initially told that he got into an argument which then became heated, but he asked that what his relationship was, and he told the police that he and Sha'Carri were in a relationship for more than 2 years, but then seemed pretty reluctant to go any further. But according to the report, when they looked under security cameras, they saw her shoving him and, of course, pushing him, and he tried to walk away in an effort to get away from Richardson, but she continues to bump into him and get into his personal space. She again pushes Coleman, pushes hard enough that sends him flying a few feet away. At this point, it appears that Coleman goes back to the TSA screening lanes in an attempt to get help. Richardson continues to follow him, still getting close into his personal space, and he throws a pair of headphones at him, striking him somewhere on his body. After speaking with an officer who was there, apparently, and this is a report that was filed by an officer there, and watching the footage, he developed probable cause, which means that there was a reason to investigate further against Richardson, and for DV assault 4, which is a category 4 assault. I was told Coleman did not want to participate any further in the investigation and declined to be a victim. He was then provided a DV resource guide. So that's basically what happened. The report was eventually submitted, and of course Richardson was eventually read her rights. She was booked into Score jail, citation, of course, the citation number, and she stated that she understood her rights. So of course she was eventually released, and of course went on to run in the first round of the USA trials a few days later. So that's the essence of the police report. What will come of it, we really don't know, because we don't know if the charges, the police will proceed with the charges, or if Coleman has any say in whether those charges are further progressed. We will see what happens there. On the track though, the finals of the 100 and of course both men and women took place And it was quite interesting because what we saw was pretty much what we expected, except for in one particular instance. Personally, I expected Trayvon Bromell to be in the mix, and pretty much he was, you know. But then when you look at what happened, Kenny Bednarek 9.79, not much of a surprise. Courtney Lindsay 9.82, which is a pretty still solid time, and of course Tim Marcus McCallum. He's a junior at the University of Tennessee, who, if you recall, was 8th at the NCAA finals back in June. He ran 10.24, and then what certainly what was clear was that clearly there were a lot of mistakes in that race. I watched that race, and now he's made a big step forward. Of course, whether or not he'll go on to become a senior at the University of Tennessee is yet to be seen. On the women's side, as I expected, Melissa Jefferson-Wooden wins in 10.65. There are people who were, when I spoke earlier in, I think it was my first video, about the fact that Melissa Jefferson was already in 10-6 shape when she ran at the Diamond League meet in Eugene, Oregon, that she won in 10.75 into a minus 1.5 win. Julian Alfred close behind in 10.77. I said at the time that both women are already in 10-6 shape. And so this is significant because now Melissa Jefferson becomes the 5th fastest woman of all time, alongside Shericka Jackson and of course Marion Jones, who both have run that time, and Sha'Carri Richardson as well. It also means that she's now joining Sha'Carri Richardson as the fastest American in this current era. Because you remember, Carmelita Jeter ran 10.64 a few years back. But now in this new dispensation, remember Melissa Jefferson is only 24 years old. Sha'Carri, I think, is 24 as well, or just turned 25. So this makes her now a strong favorite for the gold medal in Tokyo later on this year. The other thing is that based on what we've seen, and of course based on what has unfolded, I know for a fact that Julian Alfred was carrying some load in that race, into that race in Oregon, and she ran 10.77 and recovering from a bad start. So what we're seeing here is that clearly, as long as these two women remain healthy, I think the first two medals in the women's 100 meters in Tokyo belongs to them. There are those who believe that I'm overlooking Shericka Jackson. I am not. I'm just looking at the data in front of me, and this is what the data in front of me tells me, that right now Melissa Jefferson is perhaps the favorite to win gold. I'm still going with Julian Alfred because I do believe that Julian Alfred has better speed endurance, and I think that will count over the rounds, given how intense the competition will be. But Melissa Jefferson has beaten Julian Alfred this year, so that would work in her favor as well. But Julian is probably running angry and will go into the championships looking to avenge that loss. So it's going to be very, very interesting indeed. Of course, Kalia White, who ran 10.89, another member of Dennis Mitchell's club, Star Athletics. This has been a woman who has emerged late. She's 28 years old. And of course, spent the first few years up to 2023 under the guidance of Dwayne Ross. Sure, she was at the University of Northern Carolina A&T, and of course was a pretty good athlete. Back in 2019, she won the NCAA indoor title. I think she was 22.5 or 22.6. I can't recall off the bat right now, but certainly since joining Dennis Mitchell in 2023 at Star Athletics in Florida, she's clearly developed into a world-class sprinter. So she's one to watch. Aliyah Hobbs, who's at LSU under Dennis Shaver. Of course, as you remember, Dennis Shaver was the former coach of Brenna Liston before she decided to go pro earlier this year. So the women's team is pretty formidable. Let's see if they can replicate those performances in Tokyo. Yeah, but before I go, I need to correct two things. One, and add something as well. The Kalia White's time was 10.84, not 10.89, as I mentioned before. So that's the first correction. One of the things I wanted to add as well was the fact that there is some talk about Sha'Carri pulling out of the 100 and the 200. Here's what the reality is. She is a defending champion, so all she needed to do was show that she was fit. proof of fitness, which she has. And I think when she looked at her, she and her coach perhaps looked at the lineup in the 200, given the times that she's been running, looking at the situation where she's likely to face Gabby Thomas, Mackenzie Long, Tamara Clark, and have an Anavia battle, Brittany Brown, she probably thought it best to skip the 200 and focus on the 100. That's how I think of it. Unless something new emerges that suggests otherwise, that's what I'm thinking is the reason why she withdrew from the 200, especially because the 100, she has the bye, so she didn't really need to run through all rounds and run to the final. So that is the dynamic there that would probably have resulted in her not competing over 200. She hasn't run 200 all year. Mackenzie Long is the second fastest woman in the world at 21.93. And Avia Bash has been running well all year long with Brittany Brown, and of course Gabby Thomas. So, maybe she thought the best of it, leave it alone for now, and focus on the 100, focus on getting faster for the 100 in Tokyo later this year, and so that she has a shot at a medal. So that's probably why she decided to withdraw from both events, following her run in the first round, day before yesterday. So, it is going to be fireworks in Tokyo once everything remains equal, and possibly, if the conditions and the environment are right, we could see someone perhaps run 10.5. That's just my thinking right now based on what I'm seeing in front of me. So listen, we'll have another video after the trials are finished, perhaps on Monday. Then I'll look back at some of the more outstanding events at the national championships in the United States. And of course, we'll have more here on Mr. Analyst. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, of course, share our content as well, because we'd really appreciate it, because we're trying to bring something dynamic and unique here to the space on YouTube. So until then, bye-bye.